about 7 o'clock. So I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to ask questions at the end. And to do that, we got to start now. My name is Canucci Terranella. I'm the executive director at the Wenatchee River Institute, and I want to be the first one to say welcome. Thanks very much for coming out tonight. I think this is going to be a very interesting conversation. One of the things we always do at the beginning of these is ask, how many folks are new to WRI events? Anybody with a raise your hand? Don't be scared. If you've never been to a WRI event before, awesome. Thank you for coming. Especially thank you for coming. Wenatchee River Institute is an organization that is here to connect people, communities in the natural world. Doing events like this is one way we do that. We also do youth programming. We're in schools all over North Central Washington, teaching about being a naturalist and learning to steward this beautiful land that we get to live on. We also do community events like workshops for tracking or mushroom hunting or beading, all sorts of things that connect people, nature, and community. So check out our website, WenatcheeRiverInstitute.org. We've got a good calendar up there, lots of good stuff coming. And a little plug for our spring break camp. If anyone has a youngin', we have a few spots left for spring break camp. That's not normal, so sign up now. Another aspect of WRI is our effort to connect with the indigenous inhabitants of this land. And we will always start our presentations with our land acknowledgement. I'm going to read that now. This land acknowledgement was created alongside the Shin-Pisquaushu people. We are spreading the message they wish to be spread to the public. The land the Wenatchee River Institute sits on is the ancestral homelands of the Shin-Pisquaushu, the Pisquosa or Wenatchee people. Shin-Pisquaushu means the people in between. They had villages positioned along the Wenatchee River and surrounding areas. Their ancestral homeland extends from the Cascade Range throughout what is now known as the Wenatchee and Okanagan Valleys. The culture and economy of the Shin-Pisquaushu people centers on taking care of the land. They fish, hunt, gather roots and berries, basket-making materials, and medicines. The Shin-Pisquaushu are named within the Yakima Treaty of 1855. Language to establish the Wenatchee Reservation was never followed through, even with the needed surveying completed. Many Shin-Pisquaushu now live on the Colville Reservation, 150 miles northeast of Leavenworth. They were forced off their land here, and the U.S. government moved them to this reservation. The Shin-Pisquaushu people are still alive today. They continue to practice their culture, harvest their traditional foods and medicines, and hold their ceremonies passed down from their ancestors. Most people won't see or notice them, but they continue to be on the land they are connected to. Their traditional language is Inham Sheen, which is an interior Salish dialect. And I'd like to welcome you here all tonight by saying hello in their language. Tilhusht. We offer this land acknowledgement as the first step to amplifying indigenous voices and recognizing the harm done to them as a people. We stand as an ally to recognize their connection to the land and their rights to practice their culture on these sacred lands. We encourage all to learn about the indigenous people of this place you now call home. The Wenatchee River Institute is committed to sharing this land acknowledgement and following up with other actions to educate and be respectful. I'd also like to thank the folks who are making this possible tonight. Virginia Shoup is our community educator. Thank you for putting this all together. Jim, Joan, and Hillary were back here serving beers and beverages. Thank them. And Jeremy, hey! And Jeremy's making sure the folks at home can hear this. So thank you, Jeremy, for volunteering your time tonight. I'm also grateful that in this valley we have so many partners and other organizations who are working towards conservation and education. Tonight we'll hear from several of them, but first I'd like to thank the Alpine Lakes Foundation for partnering with us to support this event. Since 1993, they have actively supported conservation and education efforts in Washington. Claire Thomas, are you here? Claire Thompson is not here. Thank her anyway. If anyone knows Claire Thompson, thank her for us. They've been great support in making this happen. I'd also like to support our Red Barn sponsors. Our Red Barn sponsors for 2026 are the City of Leavenworth, Sleeping Lady Mountain Resort, Hotel Pension Anna, Sage Mountain Natural Foods, North Central Washington Audubon Society, the Obertal Inn, Munchen House, South Restaurants, Whistlepunk Ice Cream, Ludwig's German Restaurant, Kolchuk's of Leavenworth, and the Icicle Brewing Company. Thank you, sponsors. We also rely on the community to keep our programs going, continuing and growing. Thank you to our donors who are here tonight. Many of you are. If you feel moved to donate, you can put $5 in the jar at the front of the room or buy another beer. Either way works. Okay, on to the enchantments. That's why we're all here tonight. To kick things off is Gregory Scruggs. Greg is the outdoors reporter at the Seattle Times, where he writes about the intersection of recreation, land management, and the outdoor industry in Washington. His coverage takes him deep into the Cascades and out on the Salish Sea. His accolades include the President's Award in the newspaper category from the Outdoor Writers Association of America and first place from the Society of Professional Journalists Northwest Division for his coverage of the Enchanted Valley Chalet. So with that, I think I'm handing it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Canucci. Yes, please. Good evening, everyone. First of all, a big thank you to Leavenworth for outdoing my hometown. This is the second version of this talk. We held it on a very dreary night in December in Seattle during a series of atmospheric rivers that you probably all remember painfully well. And I believe I could count on both hands the number of people who turned up at the REI flagship to hear me and Matt talk about the enchantments. So this is well worth the trip over the mountains today to have such a great turnout. So I really appreciate that. And indeed, I was having a little bit of deja vu, right, with the atmospheric river, in the forecast this week, and I'm very glad to see the Red Barn back in working order. But indeed, I represent the Seattle Times, and we do, despite the name, see ourselves as the newspaper of record for all of Washington State, and try to cover important issues statewide on both sides of the mountains. So my plug is, if you are believe in this kind of journalism, if you're interested, if you just want really good coverage of the Mariners and the Seahawks, you should subscribe to the Seattle Times if you don't already. So how do we get here? I'm here to share a little bit of my reporting on the enchantments from last year. I know the folks in this room probably know the issues well, but I will refresh that a little bit and share a bit of a compare and contrast. I did a reporting trip I took to Colorado to look at another site that's managed quite effectively, I would say, but with some caveats that might provide some lessons learned for the enchantments, and we'll hear more about some work, ongoing work happening to organize some sort of management system going forward. So this is a story I published in August of last year, and because there was a boiling point, right? And to quickly recap, how did we get here? In September of 2024, the U.S. Forest Service announced there would be no seasonal hires for the year 2025. In February of last year, the so-called Valentine's Day Massacre took place when probationary employees were fired across the federal government, including Forest Service, of course. Many were eventually offered their jobs back, but not all of them took the jobs back, including quite a few who used to work here for the Wenatchee Valley Ranger District of the Okanagan-Wenatchee National Forest, the area that includes the enchantments. And so August 1st, 2025, Representative Kim Schreier, who represents this district in Congress, wrote a public letter to the head of the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the head of the Forest Service, I want to say, decrying specifically the situation in the enchantments, that staffing had gone from 11 wilderness rangers to cover the enchantments and other wilderness areas in the district to just one, and that there were, some not so lovely conditions as a result on the trail. So, how we got here, part two, not our first rodeo, right? I mean, the enchantments did not suddenly become this sort of critical issue, boiling point, what have you, just last year. This was a story in 2023 that Luke Whelan, a freelance contributor, former Outside Magazine editor, wrote for the paper. He crunched the numbers and found on permit applications, overnight permit applications to camp in the enchantments in the core zone, found it's the hottest ticket in the country, in the entire recreation.gov system for that type of permit. And that was, I believe, the most read outdoor story that the Seattle Times published in 2023. So, it is a story that we know that has a lot of reader interest. And so we motivated to come on out and see conditions for ourselves. I started making a lot of calls to organizations represented here in this room, several of which you'll hear from later on. Wenatchee Outdoors, the Leavenworth Mountain Association, the Leavenworth Chamber of Commerce, and Tread Outdoors. Just Tread, right? No outdoors there. And in the end, I connected with Mat Lyons, who's going to follow me this evening. And mostly it's sort of a matter of availability. It was like, who was the first warm body that could take me up to Kolchak Lake to be a character in a story and see what's going on? And so what did we find? We found Oren. Oren, as I understand it, is a board member here at the Wenatchee River Institute. And what is Oren doing? Oren is figuring out how do you properly dispose of a cut fruit platter from Town and Country Market. Somebody, a hiker, I suppose, didn't like cut pineapple and strawberries, and they didn't even eat the fruit. They chucked the whole thing in a creek on their way up to Kolchak Lake. And this is like the first, or not the first, but this is among the many, many, many items of refuse that Oren, a fledgling volunteer, as I believe through the Wenatchee Outdoors sort of organized ad hoc stewardship campaign, was out there, figuring out what to do with. And this among other things, there's graffiti in the bathrooms. The trailhead has cars parked a mile down the road. I mean, if anybody's been to the Enchantments on a busy day, not even just last summer, you've seen variations on this theme. And so, we were trying to get a sense of, how bad was it really? I mean, I heard from climbing friends who'd gone and done alpine routes, but, had also left at 4 a.m, that it wasn't so bad. I mean, so we're really trying to, we're trying to get a sense of it. We just gotten used to seeing trash on the trails. What would be the kind of the right register or tone to describe, the situation? But I think where we really got the keenest sense, and this is kind of the pull quote in the story, was from Chelan County Sheriff's Deputy Mike McLeod. And I should say, I am not in the helicopter. The photojournalist I work with, he got the helicopter ride. I had to hike up with Matt. I always wonder if I make a mistake turning down that offer to get the whirlybird. But, to his credit, Nick Wagner, incredible photojournalist, took some amazing photos. So Mike McLeod, the sheriff's deputy there, he has this, this line, "It's absolutely gorgeous, but totally overrun with people and garbage. It's mind-boggling there's only one person to manage this Disneyland." And that's where we got our print headline, "A Lone Ranger Patrols 900 Miles of Trails in Washington's Disneyland." And I think, whether or not wilderness destinations should be thought of like theme parks, this is a broader philosophical question that, we can get into tonight or, otherwise. But it did get me. So this story publishes, has a lot of reader engagement, a lot of interest, and the editors are saying, Greg, what's next? We shouldn't just leave it there. Can we look at some solutions? Can we try to advance the conversation? And our goal is not to advocate for any one idea necessarily, but to try to put some, use the techniques of reporting to kind of put some ideas out there in the conversation. So I have been following this emerging trend of day use permitting, overnight permits for camping, right? This has been around for a while, but it's a bit more recent to have day use permits. And I was specifically, in the National Park Service, I've got the timed entry and all kinds of things. And the Park Service is institutionally really well set up for managing recreation. That's kind of core to what they do. Forest Service, not so much. And that's another big philosophical question we can talk about tonight. But, there are a few places that have started to adopt some kind of day use management. And I threw BC Parks on there. They're probably as good or frankly better than the National Park Service. But just for proximity's sake, being a neighbor, I watched like 4 major hiking destinations in the Sea to Sky corridor get day use permits since 2020. And this is very much a post-2020 phenomenon, I should say. So wondering if there's any that offer some comparisons or relevance to the situation in the Enchantments. And I ended up zooming in on this place in particular. What you could argue is, frankly, another outdoors Disneyland. This is Kathy. Kathy is a volunteer for the Forest Service, so despite the uniform, not a Forest Service employee, in the Maroon Bells scenic area outside of Aspen, Colorado. And I stumbled upon this destination for the story the way all good adventures start, circa 2025, not over a campfire, but in a group chat. So this is one of my ski buddies. I'm talking about all this work stuff we're doing. He's like, "Oh yeah, the Maroon Bells. It's like extremely well organized. There's not this kind of free for all. You should check it out." So how I got there, part one, metaphorically, financially, I should shout out my own sponsors. So I actually got a grant from a group of organizations that are encouraging journalists to report on kind of what works and sort of ways of advancing democracy. So like very basic nuts and bolts stuff of how government works. And I convinced them that, studying this kind of land management for recreation was, part of advancing democracy. And they agreed to support the project. So thank you to them for that. How I got there, part two, quite literally, is on a bus. And not just any bus. So, I have through hiked the Enchantments, as many have. I got in a sketchy van very early in the morning at the Snow Lakes Trailhead. Excuse me. I've spoken to both of the van operators, by the way. It's not for a lack of desire to be officially licensed with the Forest Service. They have told me they have tried and literally not been able to interface with the bureaucracy to make that happen. So it's not necessarily to slight them, although it is kind of a sketchy van, let's be clear. And it's certainly not this beautiful bus, right? So this is a professional public transit authority bus, perhaps not unlike Link Transit here in Chelan County. We'll hear a little more about that in a moment. And you have to ride this bus. There is no alternative to get to the Maroon Bells in peak season between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., as I discovered when I went to visit maroonbells.com. Now, the first thing that tipped me off that this is a very different approach. There is no, to my knowledge yet, visit enchantments.com, right? And the fact that they have this sort of whole organized like landing page, silver platter that also warns you in big, bold letters, like you cannot just drive up there. You need a reservation, you need a shuttle bus, one or the other. So it's $15, $16 round trip to ride the bus. There is, again, you can drive up and park very early in the morning or late in the day. But I was visiting without a vehicle. And, the basically most, I don't want to say 90, I can't come up numbers off my head, but the vast majority of visitors are riding that bus that I showed you. And when you get on the bus, you'll meet someone like Peter. Peter gave us the pep and prep talk for visiting the Bells, leave no trace, how to deal with cold weather at altitude. A lot of things that are helpful for a first-time audience who might be unfamiliar, unprepared with an alpine environment. I should add that, this bus left from the Aspen Highlands Visitor Center. So the ski resort lodge that sort of doubles in the summertime as the Maroon Bells Visitor Center, they sort of rebrand it. And there's abundant parking and that sort of thing. Now, notice these two guys in the front row here. These guys look like they're, not just your average tourist, right? So I caught up with them before they headed off. They are two Coloradans who are embarking on the 4-pass loop, which is 28 miles, 8,000 vertical feet, over 4 passes, all of which are above 12,000 feet in elevation. So this is like through hiking the Enchantments in a day on steroids. And they were starting at the not alpine start hour of like 8:45, 9 o'clock in October. And they didn't really have a plan for how they were running. The buses stopped running, I want to say at like 5. They really didn't know how they were going to get down. They were probably going to hitch a ride if they were lucky. There was like an 8-mile walk out. And I bring this up because this is the flip side of having this really tight management on this resource. So, these guys, like they're locals. They're waiting for the right weather window to do this really ambitious thing in the mountains. And when the weather window is clear, that's such a short notice that there's not going to be a lot of, the parking was already sold out. The bus that I was on was the last one they could find. So there are definitely trade-offs for locals who want to do hard things in the mountains that take a lot of time if you have a management system like this. That was abundantly clear. I felt bad for even taking 5 minutes of their time knowing what they had ahead of them and, the long walk in the dark that was probably coming. So, what makes this whole system tick? This is Ken. Despite the logo above him, Ken also does not work for the Forest Service. Ken is the president, owner, founder, something all of the above, of H2O Ventures. It's an outdoor recreation company in Colorado. Private company, I want to stress that part. They do river rafting and all kinds of, guided stuff. And he started a sort of a side business helping out with the back end of managing this kind of day use access. So the bus that the reservation that I bought to go ride the bus was through his company. So he actually doesn't hold the contract with the Forest Service to run, reservations in the Maroon Bells. He holds it with the transit company, with the Roaring Fork Transportation Association or agency. And the Forest Service basically has given this whole thing their blessing. They have I interviewed the district ranger of the local district there. And, they, even during the government shutdown, which started shortly after I was there, all of this kept running like clockwork because the Forest Service itself does not have a direct hand in it. Now, this is a very unique model. I don't think it exists anywhere else in the country. All the other pins that I showed you of places with day use permits, those are traditional, go to recreation.gov and buy a permit to go to the Ape Caves today, or to hike Mount Timpanogos, or to park at the Mount Timpanogos trailhead, or what have you. And rightly or wrongly, Ken feels, Ken's perspective is that recreation.gov is just like a place to book a campsite. It's not sort of like a full service system that's going to give you a Peter that can teach you the leave no trace, that's, going to staff. So this is like halfway up to the Bells is this Forest Service booth. And, having that booth that can turn people around if they don't have a permit to drive up is an important piece of infrastructure. But who's staffing that booth is one of his employees. It's not a ranger in uniform. And what we talked about, and, philosophical debate number 3 to have is like, as the Forest Service staff numbers wither, something that's been going on for a long time, not just the last year or so, there was a debate that they had, and this is how they resolved it. With limited resources, and this is, again, I talked to the district ranger, the actual Forest Service guy. We would rather put the ranger out on the trail than have them sit in the booth. So that was their decision in this particular geography. They felt like, they were comfortable with having Ken's employees there, checking that you've got the permit to drive up there, or the camping permit, or whatever. And you know what? I saw a ranger on the trail when I went hiking in the Maroon Bells, which is not something last year that, you were very likely to see in the Enchantments. Now, the Maroon Bells is like windshield wilderness, right? This is like national park style. You get off the bus, you walk 200 feet, and you've got the thing that everybody came to see. This is not the hike to Kolchak Lake, which, does require some amount of effort. So, however, it's also not the first place that H2O Ventures, had come up with this day use management scheme. So this is Hanging Lake National Natural Landmark, which is like a mile and change hike and like 800 vertical feet. It's all in Glenwood Canyon, I-70, kind of near Glenwood Springs. And in like 2019, this was already becoming overrun. And the trailhead is literally an interstate highway rest area. So CDOT, Colorado Department of Transportation, not happy about all the chaos that was happening, because this thing went viral on TikTok just like Kolchak Lake is gone. So that's where the initial idea of some kind of like day use system came into place, and then they adapted to the Maroon Bells. Now, what I showed you in the Maroon Bells, very fancy, right? I mean, we're talking Aspen Ski Resort Lodge, Peter in his uniform, really nice buses, and all the rest of it. This is what it's like when you want to go to Hanging Lake. This is Tim. Tim is a really nice guy too. His handwriting maybe could use a little work, but it's literally like a guy at another Forest Service sort of, hut shack kind of thing. I want to say there was like maybe some chain link, or like a chain that he could, unclip or whatever, is if you just had to show your permit. So, day use management doesn't have to be as deluxe as kind of the Aspen level. I saw both sides of it on that trip. And ultimately my conclusion, and I want that. I don't want that formula to suggest that this is like a carbon copy or a prescription, but that, the Enchantments is some combination of, the situation in the Maroon Bells and in Hanging Lake. And sort of proximity-wise, I was really struck by the Maroon Bells because it's about the same mileage from the mountain town to the trailhead, which is right on the cusp of a wilderness area on national forest land. So that was the sort of comparison that I felt was similar enough that it was worth exploring and at least looking into, which, see our friend Kathy again, which ultimately resulted in this story, came out in November, I want to say, as we headed into the off season. And, I think the question that we're asking tonight is, well, what comes next for the Enchantments in the wake of the groundswell of attention that it got last year, which, I admit I'm partly implicated in, but was, really quite, I don't know. I think there was a lot of TV news that came up after that. I was flattered to see Nicholas Kristof in the New York Times, mention the Enchantments in one of his columns. It's a big topic facing a small community, and something that I know our next speaker, Mat Lyons from TRED, has been spending a lot of this a winter that has not looked like this one, chewing on and working on. And with that, I'll turn it over to him.
I'm gonna need help. Okay, so I want to clear two things up. First, that was a great presentation. You've changed it since... I didn't do that. You've changed it since REI. Mine does not look the same. Mine's more wordy. Yours is more picture-y. I'm going to switch that up. And also, Gregory's a liar. He called me and said, hey, somebody recommended you to go on this trip with me, and I've got a spot on a helicopter for you. Would you like to go? And I looked down at this and said, yeah, that sounds about right. And then the day of said, oh, this might be on the front page of the Seattle Times. And when it's on the front page of the Seattle Times, we bring a photographer. He took your spot. We're going to go for a hike. Okay, I've done this before many years ago because I refuse to go up there now because it's not the same as when I was a kid, as a personal choice of mine. But for the article, I said, I'm going to go. Not even thinking that this is a guy who writes articles and is going to interview me the entire way up. He's asking questions, and I am dying. I'm like, dude, can we take a break and have 3 questions, and then let's get to the next break point? So, great guy. I'm going to model my next presentation after his. Also a liar. Okay. I'm from TREAD. I'm the executive director of TREAD. TREAD is the hardest organization to explain. We've tried. My board members have tried. Board members in the audience, Ashton, thank you. We can't do it in 30 seconds. So I had a meeting with Microsoft. I was trying to get some money out of Microsoft now that they're coming to town. And they're like, we can't understand you still. We've had a meeting with you for 2 hours. You need a video. What if we give you a little bit of money and you can make a video on what TREAD is? So without further ado, this is what TREAD does.
Hey. Yes, you, lover of waterfalls and wildflowers. And you, peak beggar. You too, yes. You shredding on that hardtail. And you flinger of flies. We've got a message for you. It's time for a new era of recreation. One that will see the rise of a new world of collaboration. You love the outdoors. And so do they. And for good reason. Washington's outdoor spaces have a lot to offer, which means our outdoor recreation assets can be outmanned and outgunned, especially as resources to care for them disappear. Trails wear down. Campsites fill up. Rivers and roads become overcrowded. Prepare to see your trails, campgrounds, meadows, forests, rivers, and rock faces differently. This is TREAD. It stands for Trails, Recreation, Engagement, Advocacy, and Development. But don't worry about remembering all that. All you need to know is that TREAD works.
Sweet.
They clean up trails. They build new parking lots. They spread out impact. They create new spaces to be outside and recreate. How? That's the cool part. TREAD's a hub. Our outdoor spaces and assets have lots of stakeholders, from land managers and user groups and private businesses that make a living in outdoor recreation, and they all want to help do cool stuff. With all this brain power, there are loads of incredible ideas about how to make the outdoors more accessible and more sustainable. That's where TREAD comes in. TREAD gets everyone on the same page, then they advocate for a bigger impact, which is only possible when everyone works together. We just get more.
Sweet.
You can support TREAD here in Central Washington at tread-cw.org.
Okay. Microsoft is right. Can't say that in 30 seconds. Okay, so here comes my really wordy slideshow. I promise I'm not going to read it to you. I put it up there for those of you that like to read. I'm not going to read it all. Thank you. Okay, that's me. Okay, a little bit of history here. I'm going to stand over here, if that's okay. I won't block anybody. So there was an Alpine Lakes Collaborative. It lasted for 5 years. It had every stakeholder on the planet, or in Washington at least, there. We had everybody. We were trying to solve the Alpine Lakes Wilderness, so close to town, lots of people problems, and everybody had a different opinion, and everybody needed to be at the table. And after 5 years, unfortunately, it just failed. There was arguments over vocabulary. There was arguments over how we're going to make decisions. It was probably too large of a group, honestly, to make any kind of decisions. So as that is failing, we were like, well, what are we going to do? Maybe we need a more focused approach. At the same time, with working with the Forest Service, TRED had an opportunity to do something that's called conservation finance. There was a training in Sacramento. It's Washington, D.C. level kind of idea. I didn't know anything about it. I still can't really explain it, but it was exciting. And we're like, maybe we could take the money that was kind of set aside for the Alpine Lakes Collaborative and narrowly focus it down to the enchantments. And maybe instead of having a large group, we get a smaller group. So that was our strategic pivot. We shifted from the broad regional thing. We narrowed it down. Current focus, just protecting the most heavily used part, sustainable funding, and supporting land managers. That was kind of our goal. Could we do this? Well, this is who we invited. University of Washington, University of Montana, the Leopold Foundation, Quantified Ventures. They're one of the only ones in the country that deals with conservation finance for recreation. You may have heard about conservation finance for fuel reduction in the forest, right? There's a lot of groups that do that. Quantified Ventures is one of the only ones that do it for recreation. The Forest Service has a thing called Enterprise. If you don't know what that is, it's kind of like the SWAT team for the Forest Service. They may be experts that live all over the country, but they'll work with the local land manager on a project. So they brought their expertise. So we were trying to blend science, policy, and finance, align public agencies, and move from planning to implementation. And my goal was, let's do this in 1 year. That was 2.5 years ago. Okay, so I said, okay, well, what TRED does really well is, our job really is to support all of our partners, bring them to the table, like you saw in the video, make things happen. So who can we bring to the table? So we brought the commissioners from Chelan County, the sheriff, we brought Search and Rescue, Link, Chamber of Commerce, City of Leavenworth, thinking maybe those kind of municipalities, interagency agreements, this might be the way to go before we involve like everybody's opinion. Maybe we could get it down to like a narrowed opinion, and then we could involve the public from that step forward, like a springboard, if you will. Then this happened. Gregory talked about this. He wasn't lying. Valentine's Day massacre, that was a bad thing. And it affected friends of mine. It affected neighbors of yours. It is not okay that the Forest Service is not being staffed for the work that they're legally required to do. So what did we do as locals? Well, we got together. We're like, what are we going to do? Even though it's not our job, maybe we could do something about that. And that's where the partners that are up here today, plus more, came together and said, what are we going to do? Now, this is last season. We did our best. We might not have done it the right way. We learned lessons, but we tried. And when people come up to me and they say, why are you doing the job that our tax dollars and our government is supposed to do? I say, because it's our backyard. And that's the answer. That's why we come together. Is this sustainable? No. People will stop volunteering. But in a crisis, we come together. So that's what we did. Now, here's the problems that happened. All toilets remained in place because there was a fire season and the helicopter capacity with the lack of capacity from the agency on the ground. Those toilets are still up there, under snow, still full. Right? Kind of gross. So because of all these listed reasons, I mean, it's not the Forest Service's fault that the bureaucracy and Doge, and I'm not going to get into politics with anyone in here. I don't care who you voted for. It's facts. It happened to them. It happened to us. So here's what we did. We said, what can we do? Well, we thought about contracting and hiring work on behalf of the Forest Service. Turns out that can be done. I'll tell you about that in a minute. A single agreement to streamline implementation, expansion of local volunteer involvement. Thank you, Wenatchee Outdoors, for what you guys did. It was amazing. I mean, can we just give Wenatchee Outdoors a hand right now? Like, whether it followed the Forest Service bureaucracy or not, You guys came out and you picked up trash and you buried poop, and it's like a start, right? From the trailhead to Kolchak, amazing, right? Problem is, enchantments are like way further out and way more complex, and sometimes it requires some really gross stuff that none of us in this room want to do. So we shifted toward the implementation, focus, practical solutions, and then what happened was the forest supervisor decided to say, okay, now to her credit, she's new to the job as well. This is only her second year. So think about this. She got hired to replace a bunch of people as a Forest Service supervisor that have not done anything about the enchantments either. And I'm talking 4, 5, 6 of them before her. We're talking decades. Like, we all know this has been a problem forever. The Valentine's Day thing just exasperated the problem. So now she's tasked with, hi, you're new on the job, and oh, by the way, we just cut all your staff, and you have an enchantments problem. Might have taken her a second to get caught up, right? But she did, and she assigned Jared Bowman, who's in charge of all things wilderness and rec at the supervisor's office for the Yoka Win, to say, Jared, I need you to go attack this problem. I want all the data. I want everything that's been done. I want you to bring it to me, and that's what's currently happening. And it's been happening for the last few months. So that's good news. So what this group that I was talking about before, that 2.5 years of work, what we put together, that's all the scientists and all the other partners, was we want to present to the forest supervisor, like, set the table for her. Like, you don't have, I know you're new, welcome to the forest, thanks for being here. This is all the stuff we've tried before, this is how it worked before, and we have some ideas on how we think you could make a change. And they go from simple to complex. And we have presented her with that information. I should probably say this from the beginning, sorry. The reason that I'm standing up here instead of a Forest Service person standing up here and explaining it to you, they're still under a gag order. They still don't get to talk to us without fear of losing their jobs, being punished, whatever that looks like, right? I should not be the one who's up here talking to you. So I may make mistakes. I may say the wrong thing, but this is what I know. And I work with the Forest Service on a daily basis. I hope I'm getting it right. So disclaimer. Okay. So from simple to complex, the quickest one that we came up with was improve the parking management, enforce the existing capacity limits and parking rules, and target education and compliance efforts. We have infrastructure up there. We have so many toilets. We have so many parking places. We have so many things. Like, that's not a change. It's just manage what you have instead of adding more and more and more. Maybe you could just manage what you have. So that was our first simple idea. Moderate. Maybe there's a shuttle, like the Maroon Bells example. Maybe there's timed entry. Maybe there's day use permits. Maybe we adjust or increase fees to support the stewardship. And then you can see the high complex ones, gated access with staffed entry at a booth similar to a national park, comprehensive access management and infrastructure, all these things. Now, I know there are people in this room who are hissing right now. Okay. And I know there are people in this room that are cheering right now. Okay. It doesn't matter. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine. He's actually here today. And he's telling me, he's like, I don't understand why you want to limit access ever. I don't understand. Da, 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 da. And I said, I'm not limiting access. I'm just saying there might be a problem. So the way that I am now currently saying it, thank you, OP, for making me think this way, is the wilderness has been designated Big W Wilderness. And with that designation comes limited amount of people, protection of wildlife, protection of the plants, protection of the thing. It's very different than open public lands everywhere else in the Forest Service. So you have to decide, and I'm not saying you have to decide. What I have to decide is, do I think that Big W Wilderness should be protected as it's supposed to be? Or do I want to redesignate it as just public land? But right now it's designated this way. So we either have to do it that way, try to, or we could go to Congress, we could get it to be not wilderness, and it could be treated like any other part of public land. And I think that's where you should start to focus if you're having questions about what to support and what not to support. Start there, and then let's have a conversation about where it goes from there. So here's good news. Last year we had one ranger. she did not just do the enchantments. She did the entire Alpine Lakes Wilderness, the PCT, and there are 2 other wilderness areas on this forest that she was also monitoring. Next year, this is big news. This is exciting news. I hope you guys get excited about this. It's not a fix, but it's a patch. Because they changed the rules, the federal government, the Wenatchee Okanagan was allowed to hire seasonals this year. They're hiring 4 wilderness rangers, 3 to 4 trail crew leads, and a few people for what we call DevRec, which is like campgrounds and developed recreation sites. So that's all brand new this year, and it's amazing. So there's 4 that they get to hire. We're going to get 2 climbing rangers from the Access Fund climbing organization. They're going to be in town. They're going to be doing some coffee talks around town. We'll promote those. Wenatchee Outdoors will promote those. I'm sure we'll all share to educate the public. They're also going to go in and act as climbing rangers. So kind of part-time 2 climbing rangers. 2 more are going to get hired from Tread. You should be thinking, that's weird, because it's totally weird. So the story with this is Washington State has a program called Recreation and Conservation Office. So the legislature gives the RCO a bunch of money, and then RCO grants out to all kinds of people all across the state money to do things. The Forest Service is an applicant. They often score the highest, and they often get money from the state to hire staff. Unfortunately, because of DOGE and all the constraints that they're under right now, they can't push the button to hire those staff with that money. We can't make grants and agreements through a grants and agreements process when the grants and agreements people have been decimated as well. So you still have the same number of grants that have to come through this funnel, but you only have a few people left to funnel it. So what RCO did, which is amazing, and the state of Washington did, and the Forest Service did, is they came up with a workaround, sort of, that said, hey, what if we could, this money's already been allocated, what if we can give that to a third-party partner, Tread, and they could hire the people and then pass them back to the Forest Service? We're going to do that. So there's 2 more. So this is kind of exciting. Is this sustainable? No. But it's a patch for this season, and I think it's going to be better than last season. And like I said, I may have screwed some things up. I apologize if I had. But here's what you could do. If you want to take action today in any way, I'm going to have business cards at the end. We can have coffee, beers, chats, whatever you want. You can volunteer. You can go on those Wenatchee Outdoors outings. You can help do what Oren did. Carry an extra bag. Encourage your friends. I know it's not your trash. Pick it up anyway. I do it. You do it. It helps. Support the work. Give to one of these organizations. Give to Tread. Give to WRI. I don't care. Like, we're all doing the good work. Like, give them money, because it takes a lot of money to make what we do happen. Use your voice. Call or write your members of Congress. And then this is kind of new. We're announcing it today. We are trying to fundraise for a Tread documentary on the enchantments. The whole goal of this documentary, and that's why there's a camera right there staring at me. Hi, Charles. Is that we're kind of going to do what Gregory did, which is this is happening here. There's other places that are doing it. Can we all learn? And then the whole goal is that at the end of the documentary, it gets licensed out to anybody that's has a conservation wilderness mindset across the country. They probably have their own issues where they're from. They can show the movie in a place like this. Then we can have a question and answers thing. And we're trying to spread the love nationally as well as highlight what's going on today. Blah, blah, blah. Yep, you read it. Okay. So, thanks for listening. And if you want to follow up with anything, like I'm going to stick around at the end. I have stuff about what I talked about, the documentary. You want to talk about philosophy, government, access versus non-access, I'm your guy. I love having those conversations, but thanks for listening to me anyway.
So we are fortunate to have some of the very individuals or representatives of the organizations that did a lot of the hard work here in the room. So we're going to bring 3 additional voices up, not for long presentations, just to highlight Wenatchee Outdoors, the Leavenworth Chamber, and the Leavenworth Mountain Association to bring those voices into the conversation as we have a bit of Q&A as well. So I wanted to bring up Thom Schroeder from Wenatchee Outdoors, Troy Campbell from the Leavenworth Chamber, and Zach DeLuca from the Leavenworth Mountain Association to join Matt. And I'm going to give them each an opportunity. You've heard tidbits about them, but just like a 60-second elevator pitch on what their organization did last year to step up for the Enchantments. Well, they get positioned in front of the more beautiful decor, the mountain mosaic here. Yeah, and so just to get a flavor in their own words of what they were doing last year, and then I've got a question for each of them, and then we'll open it up to the room. So in no particular order, but Troy's first. Troy, tell me about what the Leavenworth Chamber was up to last year.
Okay, last year we launched our 6th year of doing our Recreation Ambassador program. Has anybody been a Recreation Ambassador in the room? Yes, thank you. They're signified, if you see this hat, they were a Recreation Ambassador, or they're like me, just covering up male pattern baldness. But last year, the Recreation Ambassador, we were able to get $90,000 additional dollars from the county to run our program. This has been a program that we started about 5 years ago when we had an excess of lodging tax dollars because of COVID. We couldn't throw events. And it's right at that time, that was a key time, where the organizations like mine, there's an acronym called DMO. It stood for years, Destination Marketing Organization. But right around 2020, it changed. Everybody started calling ourselves destination management organizations because a lot of the work we do, we don't really need to do big blanket marketing anymore to tell people about Leavenworth, but we do need to deal with the people once they get here in a more responsible way. So the Recreation Ambassador program does just that. It's a volunteer program in that nonprofit organizations can sign up to provide volunteers for a weekend, and then they can get a cash stipend for doing that. So last year, I'm just going to read some of the stats from the program. We had 13 volunteer organizations that raised $45,000 for themselves. They had a total staff hours of 1,020. They had 29,000 interactions. Now, this is both at the trailheads and also on the river. 17,000 cars counted, 1,056 surveys conducted, and 3,819 gallons of trash was picked up by the ambassadors over the course of the summer. So that was with extra people, and we were able to staff Fridays and Mondays. I've asked the county for additional money to have paid staff again this year. I'm not sure that I will get that money, so if you want to let the county know they should give me that money, please do. But that would allow us to have some paid staff this year. But what has also happened as my costs have increased over the years, my insurance, when I took over Oktoberfest, went from $19,000 to $56,000 in 1 year. My costs have increased to the point where the Recreation Ambassador, I could no longer fund it with lodging tax dollars. So this year, 2026, I had to ask my board, do you want to cut the program or do you want to fund it ourselves with the money we make, the proceeds we make every year? And they chose the latter. That this is way too important of a program for the community, for our destination. So we are now funding the volunteer program to the tune of about $50,000 a year. So we're asking for that additional money, but we're hoping we can get it. If not, we can still run the program. But this puts people at the trailheads, helping, head off the yoga pants people, I call them, that saw the Instagram picture or the TikTok video and are here unprepared. But it helps with a lot of the safety information, safety messages, helping dogs that have been locked in cars, all the things that happen. And also providing the data. Somebody mentioned earlier, I think Greg mentioned earlier, coming up with all of the data and things. We now have 5 years of data at these trailheads. Cars counted every weekend at 1 o'clock on Saturdays and Sundays. So all this data to know what we're dealing with and not just anecdotally I remember kind of thing. So anyway, that's what the chamber is doing. I'm passing on.
Round of applause.
Thanks, Troy. That's really cool. I'm learning lots of stuff. Welcome, everybody. Thanks again for coming. I'm Thom Schroeder. I serve currently as board chair for Wenatchee Outdoors. This is a heavy topic. and it's fascinating. I'm just really interested in the difference between this turnout and apparently the Seattle turnout. This is Matt. You said it's our backyard, so this is really fascinating. True story, real quick. My wife and I, she's back there. We got married in the Enchantments, so it's a very special place for us. In a very particular spot in the Enchantments that we had selected. But the story for Wenatchee Outdoors really is about volunteers. It's really about, and I think it's amazing what Sarah, our ED, did in the moment of seeing a need, filling a need. Like, all this happened on February 4th. Oh shit, what are we gonna do? Just the amount of like what Matt talked about, where but just folks just came together because it's our backyard and this place is important to us. And so Wenatchee Outdoors organized, as fast as we could to just gather all the passion and the just interest in like, let's help this place that we all know and love, and gathered 98 volunteers, I believe it was. 40 actually went up. So we had 40 volunteers going up with folks that we've heard from to pick up the trash, do all that work. We had 90 volunteers on a wait list because we just couldn't manage that many volunteers with the Forest Service. And so there's a lot of passion for this, and I appreciate all the support. And real quick though, I didn't do this earlier, but who's all familiar with Wenatchee Outdoors, just to get a gauge? We're doing something. We're doing something right. So about half of you. So if you haven't, WenatcheeOutdoors.org is my plug. We guide, inspire, connect the outdoor community of North Central Washington. So thank you again.
Thanks for that. I'm Zach DeLuca. I'm on the board of the Leavenworth Mountain Association. And what we did last year, we had tons of big ideas for like, what can we do? Maybe we could hire somebody to take on fill some of the gap by the Forest Service. Quickly realized that there was no capacity to coordinate anything like that. So we kind of turned back to what we've been doing for a long time, which is taking care of the poop problem in the Enchantments and in the canyons. We've been providing Santa cans in the Icicle and Tumwater canyons for many years. We have 11 Santa cans in 9 locations throughout the summer and 1 at the end of the road in the Icicle in the winter. And we went to the Forest Service and we said, what if we pay to clean all of your CXTs, all of your permanent toilet facilities all year? And so we did that. We paid a private contractor to clean the Snow Lakes Trailhead parking lot toilet, the Stewart Lake parking lot toilet, several in the Tumwater, and provided all the Santa cans. We also were trained by the lone wilderness ranger to take care of the vaults in the Enchantments. And while we didn't do that as often as we would have maybe liked, we did take care of those vaults up there when there wasn't anybody else to do it, which is swapping out a dirty, nasty, filled vault for a slightly less nasty, empty vault. And we are hoping to do that again this year. We unfortunately didn't receive the grant funding that we were hoping for to pay for the CXTs, but hopefully with some of the developed rec folks that are coming back, Forest Service can take care of some of that. Yeah, that's what we did last year.
Amazing work. I did not know about that level of graphic detail, so it's very commendable. Dirtbag climbers at their finest. Great. Well, I'm going to take moderator's prerogative to just ask a first question of our guests and then open it up to the room. And I want to start with Troy and the chamber because, in some sense, you've been at this the longest, right? You've got multiple years of data. So as we're looking at the state of the Enchantments last year heading into this year and going forward, what do you think we can learn from the data you've collected, sort of the institutional knowledge from the chamber at this point, that might inform, some of the ideas that Matt brought up in his presentation as that community conversation kind of takes shape?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Oh, my head is spinning with all the ideas.
Maybe there's something concrete, like something a rec ambassador, for years and years keeps coming back and reporting back to you. That's like, there's a way to fix this.
Yeah, there's a lot of quick fixes that we can help with just training and the way we train our ambassadors. A lot of the data that's really interesting is a complete switch of where people are from in July and August. And that was something that I wouldn't have really thought of, that it actually becomes so very local up until a certain point, and then it's almost like a switch flips, and people are from Australia, India, all over the world. It is, and it's a little daunting because you think, if I'm trying to educate people, that's the entire world. This is like a really big audience. So, so I think kind of having them help us target that a little bit is, but a lot of times we're seeing things that we can then relay. Like, we're seeing a lot of this happen. This is what needs to get. The problem is there's been no one there to help fix it. So they've got all the ideas and they're witnessing all these things, but there's no Forest Service person to go, hey, this is what we should do.
And Thom, Wenatchee Outdoors' Herculean effort to stand something up very quickly last summer. What are your plans for this year? I mean, is it sustainable to continue? Would you be able to accommodate 90 volunteers off the waiting list, like in a way that you weren't last year? What's 2026 looking like for the Wenatchee Outdoors effort on this topic? Noting also that we do have some version of a cavalry arriving from the Forest Service.
Yeah, that's another thing I learned, so that's inspiring. Yes, and I understand there's some limiting factors around capacity with the Forest Service. This is good news. I'm pointing at a board that's no longer there, but those stats that Matt shared is good news. I say yes, and what I'm really excited about is the partnership opportunities that Matt talks about. That this kind of, you all being here and this kind of just spreading the word about the impact and the potential for solving that impact. I think, we're here for it. So to answer the question, yes, we'll figure it out, but yeah.
Well, and Zach, let's be frank. I think climbers arguably have the most to lose in any change to the status quo of how the Enchantments and, the Icicle corridor is managed. What do you see a path forward that accommodates, both the needs of alpine climbers or just rock climbers who, whatever time of day are trying to get up there, and somebody who saw this on TikTok and got on an airplane and put on their hiking boots and wants to go see this Culture Lake for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, so to take a little bit of a step back, LMA was started as a way to give climbers an organized voice to the land manager. And the reason that we thought we needed that organized voice is because the climbing resource in the Icicle and in the Enchantments is unparalleled. If you grew up rock climbing in Washington, there was probably a route in the Enchantments that was on your sort of like bucket list, something that you were aspiring to do, something that your friends did and you wanted to do it, or something that you were in the gym training for. Like, it's a world-class destination. To Troy's point, there are people that travel across Washington, across North America, across the globe to climb in the Enchantments. So to lose access would just be a terrible thing. And, I think there's been this conversation about, is the wilderness going to be capital W wilderness or something else? And there's been talk about national parks. And I think there isn't an example of a Forest Service managed piece of land that is such a large climbing destination. Many of them are national parks or even BLM or state land. And I think we have to take a cue from the national parks. They've figured out how a wilderness area can coincide with a recreation destination. And there are examples of places where there are climbing access, day use, and bivvy permits that you can get, because they understand that where the climbers are going is not where everybody that's in the parking lot is going. So these are permits that you can get. Some of them are even overnight, and most of them are self-served. They're unlimited. There's not a a super limited number of them every day. They're just show up at the kiosk, say where you're going to go, and they expect maybe a little bit of a higher end user to be taking these permits. Somebody that understands L&T principles, somebody that's not going to have a fire, somebody that's not going to leave their camp. They're going to be self-contained. Everything they bring with them is going to stay with them the entire time. And I think that something like that could work. I think there are places in the enchantments where, like the bottom of Kolchak Balanced Rock, way up high on Dragon Tail, that can be managed slightly differently with a climbing specific permit. I think Snow Creek Wall would be a real tricky challenge to navigate because that's not generally an overnight sort of outing, but it would be severely impacted if we limited access severely, whether at the parking lot or otherwise. So it's a really complicated issue, but I think there are some examples out there that we could use.
Well, I suspect there might be some questions here in the room, so I'd love to see some hands. I'm happy to walk around and give you a chance to say your piece or ask a question. I saw one right here. And I'll hold the mic just for the benefit of our audience at home. Please make sure to speak into the mic.
You mentioned that there's data for the past 5 years about who's been up there, the cars, all of that sort of thing. Is there a place that we could go to see that data, number one? And number two, I haven't heard anything about any studies about capacity. So we know how many people are up there, but what is the actual capacity do we feel is up there based on the number of vaults, the environmental impact, all of that? And I've heard 1,500 people a day, which sounds insane to me. And I was up there in 2016 when it was just a hot mess. I mean, lots of toilet paper, the whole thing, even back then. So has anybody looked at what the capacity should be in order to determine how we should manage it going forward?
I think you can take this. Okay, I'll do the first one. If you go to leavenworthchamber.org, the chamber's website, leavenworthchamber.org, on the homepage is the last year's end of season report. So at the end of the Recreation Ambassador season, we do a report. It's full of all the daily reports and a complete a pulling together of all of the data that we collected both on the river and at the trailhead. So you can find, it's like 39 pages of wonderful reading. So yeah, you can pull that out right from the homepage.
Data, yes. The Forest Service has been collecting data for decades. Your number was a little low. The highest last year was 2,400 people on one day. Think about that. So one of the things that the Forest Supervisor tasked Jared with was to organize all that data and get it into a concise report for her. What did we do in the past? What was staffing like? What are numbers like? What does the Big W Wilderness Act say we should be doing? All those things. And so that's in process right now. And I'm hopeful it's Forest Service, public record someday, that we can have access to that. Troy's is right now. I'll commit to you to figuring out when we have all that compiled. And, you know, if we have to do a public records request, that's what we have to do.
So I can quickly add a bit on the capacity note from the reporting that the last time, I don't recall when the enchantments were designated as a wilderness area. If somebody can, early 70s? Okay. 70s. So the enchantments were in the original Alpine Lakes Wilderness, which celebrates 50 years this year. Okay, there you go. Then in 1993 was the last time that the Alpine Lakes Wilderness recreation use environmental analysis was done, and they tweaked the rules. Overnight backpacking permits were capped at 312 people, and at the time, daily permits were deemed to, quote, over-regulate users' access to the public domain. So and as we know, there are no day use permits, so there's no officially designated carrying capacity for day use. For overnight, it's 312 if every single permit for overnight's used up. Hold on. We've got some folks at home, so.
Can you clarify that 2,400 number? Is that the people who left the trailhead, or they went all the way into the enchantments? Did they just go to Kolchak and come back?
That's correct. 2,400 people passed a ranger that was collecting data between the trailhead and Kolchak. There was a line of people so long that you couldn't identify groups. In 5 minutes, it was 115. Well, I'm sure that data has been collected at some point. That's not the data I'm talking about for that specific day number. That just stuck in my head as a big number. Oh, 100%. Yes. Yeah. We really have three groups, if you think about it. There's through hikers that want to start at 5 o'clock in the morning and get all the way through, right? There's the permit holders, right? There's the permit holders who want to stay the night, and that's capped. The rest are day users who may have seen it on TikTok or wherever and want to go up for the day and come back. So as we think about management opportunities, you also have to think about three different types of users too.
And maybe four. Yeah, the climbers, right?
Sorry. Sorry. Yeah. Hold on. I want to be very clear because I want to walk out of here without limping. I love climbers. Before I got fat, I was one. I hope to be one again someday. Okay.
All right. The gentleman in the Wenatchee Outdoors shirt.
All right. I'm going to try not to ask multiple questions, but okay, I'm going to ask multiple questions. How can we advocate in this room for day use permits or even parking sort of enforcement? And then second, for Matt, do you have any concerns that a documentary featuring the enchantments will only add to the problem?
Juicy.
Wow. Let me start with the last one. 100%. And we've had those conversations about the documentary that like this could just add to the problem, but it also could add to the solution because I'll speak for the documentarians that do this for a living. When you put a camera on somebody, it adds pressure to that somebody. So think about this. You work for the Forest Service, camera's on, a little bit of pressure, right? To do something, maybe. I don't know. So maybe. I had the same conversation with Icicle Brewery. Is anybody here from Icicle Brewery? I don't want to speak out of turn. Every beer in the Enchantment series is labeled after a peak, a rock, a thing. Are they part of the problem? I've had conversation with Troy about this. Every parking lot in this town is named after something in the Enchantments. I think the answer is no, because if I'm from San Francisco, every beer and parking lot is named Golden Gate something or Golden Gate this, or are they a part of the bridge problem? I think every community that's located in an area names things after their area. Now, could his article have brought people? Sure. Could the documentary bring people? Yep. But I'm telling you right now, TikTok is doing it for us. Yeah. I think it might be an extra pebble in the bucket, but I would think that I know that the goal of the documentary is to have a through line that people walk away from the end of the documentary who know, oh, there's a different category called wilderness versus public land. I now know what that is, and now I get to make my own decision on whether I want to visit that place or not. That's the ultimate goal. I already lost your first two questions.
One question is how can we in this room advocate for day use permits or even just parking enforcement or parking permits?
Yeah. If you're on the side that wants to advocate for that, talk to me. I'll plug you into the process. Right now, the process is internal in the Forest Service. So I talked about that 2.5 years of work. Now it's an internal process. The forest leadership will make a decision on how they want to proceed with that process. My hope is that they narrow it down to a small list of options that they're comfortable with. We get to bring stakeholders to the table to talk about that small list of options, and that process is very short. I don't know. But if you want to talk to me, I can plug you into whatever you want to advocate for. All access all the time, build a gondola, pave the trail, fine. To keep everybody out, nobody gets to see it. It's just a picture, okay. But my job is not to pick a side. I'm just here to inform and hopefully get your voice to where it needs to go.
Gondola, anybody for the gondola proposal? I didn't think so. Let's go one in the back here.
Oh, you got it. I can't touch it. Okay. We talked on the phone. I was one of, you might have rode one of my sketchy vans.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Nice to meet you. Yeah, so hey, good to see you. Born and raised in Leavenworth. I've hiked the Enchantments probably 13 times, both ways. And I started a shuttle service about 9 years ago. And out of necessity, almost, because I was like, even as a local, I need a way to get back up to the top to get the other car. But just a few things that I've recognized. I've gone to a lot of national parks. Glacier National Park has something that's really interesting. It's a timed entry I think it's around 7 a.m. or so. If you're not past that point at 7 a.m., you can't enter. We actually got turned around, my wife and I, with our 2 kids. We woke up early. We didn't make it. We were hauling, trying to get to the gate, and they turned us around. And I was like, honestly, I appreciate it. I was like, that was really well done. And they were hard pressed. They're like, absolutely not. You have to get a permit. So we went back to town, put in for the lottery for the day use permit. Luckily, we got one. But my question is, in terms of the influx of people, have you noticed because I'm usually out of there by 7 a.m. I'm out of the mountains by 7 a.m. I've already done a few trips up the trail or up the road. I think I've driven it 5,000 times, which is crazy to think about. I was doing the math back here. When do you guys see the biggest influx of people throughout the day? Because I would imagine it changes. You were talking about the 3 categories. Who is the biggest group of hikers? Are they the 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. going up and back, getting back by 1 o'clock? You know what I mean?
Troy, do you have some data on that? Troy, do you have some sense of that?
Sense of
that
the
time of day?
answer, just in that when the recreation ambassadors get there at 8 o'clock, they have a hard time parking, and at 8 o'clock, and they're still counting full parking at 1 o'clock. So it is pretty much from that whole chunk of the day that they still got people coming.
Well, I mean, I jump in for a second. I think it's possible that the through hikers alone are filling up the lot, right? I mean, like there's maybe the TikTok, I shouldn't all say the TikTok, but the Kolchak day hiker, like there may be more of them in theory over the course of the day, but it is a relatively small parking lot, right? And it doesn't take much to fill it up to begin with. That's the trouble. Let's go over here again.
Thank you guys so much for your work. Really appreciate it. I'm curious, you've been talking about community sentiment on the spectrum, right? Lots of opinions about management, but do you have a sense of where the majority of people are? And I'm hoping it's on the side of more management than less management, but is that something anybody's looked at?
Good question.
Where it falls on the spectrum? That's the question.
Maybe you need. Okay, maybe the chamber needs to fund a poll. I don't know.
So you saw the video. Tread represents everybody. Motorcycles, snow, winter, spring. So this is not my tread perspective. We would like to represent all. I've had conversations with the Forest Service about if we bring this band back together, this 2.5 years of work back together, who should be the stakeholders that we invite to that next meeting? I have a pretty strong sense that all of the wilderness groups are going to be pro limit. Conservation, wildlife, botany, pro limit. I think that if you say we're going to limit access, you're going to get some people raising their hand about, hey, hold on, how much and what are you talking about from the climbing group, especially, obviously. Hikers, too. WTA has a strong access advocacy arm to what they're doing. And I think everybody else kind of falls in the middle. I don't know, like a strong sense of percentage wise, right? But I think the conversation needs to go from, oh, we're going to limit access, I'm for or against it, to how are you going to limit access? What Zach talked about in other places allow for climbers to access differently than somebody else. A shuttle system just allows you to access the place in a different way. It just says you can't park here. You can still access. So I think it has to go beyond access yes or no to access how.
Yeah, I think you define access. It's a good question, and I think it starts to illuminate this idea that there's all these different groups, and I hate to think of it in such a complex way, but because I always want to simplify things. But I think it depends on the demographic. For Wenatchee Outdoors, you're going to see a lot of folks who would want to limit access because it's our backyard, or we do this thing and we respect what we're doing and the process and the requirements that. The responsibility, honestly, of what it entails to go out to a place like this. So it really, I think it just comes down to your demographic. You kind of talked to a little bit about Matt, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna agree with Matt that LMA is an access organization, and so we sort of shudder to think that there would be less access. With that said, we are a huge minority in the number of users that are that walk past Kolchak Lake. But that is also like, once you get to Kolchak Lake, to your point, that's not exactly the Enchantments. So we need to get there early so that we can get to where we're actually going. And if the only way to get there is to pass through a parking lot or pass through a gate that's not open, that's gonna be really hard for the climate community to swallow. I'm not saying that that's gonna happen, but what LMA will want to see is provisions for that sort of like longer day, for that to be possible. So.
We have some questions from folks online, so I want to give Virginia from WRI a chance to let them speak their mind as well.
So a couple of questions that are kind of related, but from different people. The first one is, are there any conversations being had about a local specific type of permit? And then the second one, I guess it's similar. What future opportunities are there for locals to participate in the conversation as a stakeholder? So locals permits and locals as stakeholders. What you got?
Locals as stakeholders is an easy one. I think reach out to myself, Troy, Wenatchee Outdoors, LMA, plugged in. Reach out to somebody up here that can help you get plugged in. The local access question, there's been a bunch of ideas thrown out in that 2.5 years of work. And one of them was mine. And I used to work on military bases. And, if you've ever been on a military base, there's a gate and there's a sticker in your windshield. And depending on the color of that sticker and the designation of that sticker, some go right through, sir. And some you stop and just tell them your whole life story. We could do something like that. You could get a Chelan County locals pass in your electric bill. There's all kinds of options. Climbers could have their very specific pass, right? Timed entry could be for people who don't live in Chelan County. I mean, there's interagency agreements that would have to happen. There's all kinds of authorities and regulations and those things, and it will take time. But we can have the conversation now and come up with the best possible solution. What I'm pushing the Forest Service to do is start with something. I don't care how small. Like, I just want one thing. Just one thing by August for 2027. I don't even care what it is. Call it a pilot, and we will adjust from there. And every year we can get better. Hopefully that answers the question. Sure.
On that too. It wasn't so long ago that there was a daily lottery at the Forest Service in town, and that while it wasn't specific to locals, I think that locals had the upper hand in a really big way because they could show up every day. It doesn't ruin your day to go down to the Forest Service and drink a cup of coffee and see if you win. Whereas you may not make the drive across the mountains to see if you're going to go to the Enchantments. So I think that something like that would be a really good, fair way, but it still does give locals the upper hand. So it worked for a long time. I think it could work again.
Saw some hands in the back.
Good point.
I'm from the Northwest Ski Museum Ski Hall of Fame, and we put on the Mountain Sports Expos the last couple of years. This past year, it was specifically about sustaining and preserving our mountain sports recreation areas. And I just want to thank all of you mountain recreation groups that help to sustain things and preserve things. And I think this is really important. And I have a couple of questions. One for Matt. Would it help to use, I know we're limited on parking areas here, but we have the Leavenworth Ski Hill Heritage, or the Leavenworth Winter Sports Club parking lot. Could that be a parking area and we have a transit that comes up and shuttles people? Is that a possibility?
I mean, absolutely. It could be. There's the Ski Hill property, The city of Leavenworth has property on the way to Sleeping Lady. There's the fish hatchery property. There's all kinds of places where we could do a shuttle. That's not the problem.
No.
The problem is, do we do a shuttle or not? And I'll tell you, Link Transit's on the list. They've already said that they will come up and engineer a parking lot that allows for the most parking spaces where a bus of theirs can turn around. They've also said, and I think you're going to love this, we don't want to take away from any of the local transportation options either. We could be the transportation authority and work with them to make sure they're doing it right as well, or instead of us. So they're not coming in saying, we'll do it for you. They're willing to work with whoever. But the answer is yes. It's just one of the many options that needs to be a decision that we need to try or not try. And so, yes.
And Troy, do you find that you have visitors from across the world, across the globe, that are not English speaking?
Yes.
we
There,
use
and
a
in fact, we've talked about how we need
Use the translation
some
app
translations done.
to do a prep for them? Yeah.
Yeah, that we should be translating some of our materials, because we have a whole campaign that combines with our ambassador program called Give a Schnitzel. And the whole Give a Schnitzel program is about being a better steward, using the trails properly, doing all the things right. And so, combined with that, we push that messaging.
Would there be connectivity issues to at the trailhead for that kind of use of technology? Like, there's no. The problem is there's no Wi-Fi cell phone at the trailhead. So a lot of what we have is printed materials there. I saw a couple more hands in the back. Yeah.
I identify as a 62-year-old female yoga pant wearing woman who hikes mainly with women, and they are the women who are willing to pick up shit and cauliflower out on the trail. And this is petty, but it's not at all petty, especially in this administration. So I don't know very many men who wear yoga pants. So I would take that and get rid of that and say what you really mean. And what I think you guys, I agree. I appreciate you so very much. And I don't remember who said yoga pants. I love you all. I think you're amazing. Thank you.
That's it. No question. Okay. Okay, just checking. Just checking if you had a question. Got one in the front.
One other area you might look at for successful transportation into the parks is Zion. They've actually had a bus service restriction there longer than Maroon Bells. And what they found out after talking to some of the rangers when I was last there is once they put the bus system in place, it cut down on the number of people coming to the park, made it much quieter, much less trash, much less impact on the services, the food services, the toilet services, whatever, in the park, and it had a very positive impact on Zion.
Yeah, I should say I really went to Maroon Bells specifically because it's on Forest Service land and not a national park, and that guy Ken, right? Remember Ken, the guy who runs the company that does the reservations? His one of his lines is like, the National Park Service is in the hospitality business. Like, they know how to handle that. Forest Service has been thrust into the hospitality business. They don't know how to handle it. And rightly or wrongly, or whatever you think of it, like, he sees a sort of an opportunity and yes, a profit motive to provide that hospitality service that the Forest Service is not structurally well set up to do. What I would add, though, and this is a sort of a small detail, but this is kind of a wonky crowd. Like, this whole idea of all these groups coming together in Colorado around the management and the transportation stuff. There was a mediator, right? There was sort of a tread-like figure, if you will. And it was actually from the U.S. Federal Department of Transportation. So they have a strike team, a SWAT team, like the Enterprise group at the Forest Service, called the Volpe Center, VOLPE, and it's like a think tank internally. And they actually have like a dedicated staffer who just focuses on transportation on federal lands related to recreation. So like, I found an old study that he authored about the Zion thing, and he was the consultant that they hired. So like, everybody chipped in. The Aspen Chamber, Aspen Ski Resort, City of Aspen, Pitkin County. They all chipped in a little bit of money to hire this federal consultant who basically was able to help them come up with this, with all the bells and whistles. So I see a lot of similarities with what Tread's doing. We'll take one more and then we're going to wrap it up. I see a very eager face over here.
I'm curious, for a short term, something it feels like we need, that might be easy. In Hawaii, there's a bay you can go to, but in order to go there and use the beach, you have to watch a video, right? Which, so you can do your leave no trace stuff, but also, don't die out there, don't be stupid, that kind of stuff. We've had so much increase with all the need for rescues. I wasn't involved, but I had to help somebody get off, right, this past summer. So, and we know that's what way increased the number of people, right? So I'm just wondering if there's something like that, and you you have to do it once a year or something like that, right? Like you have to watch this video to be able to go through the gate or something. I don't know. I wonder about something like that.
Yeah, the search and rescues last year, I think, were 35 and multiple deaths. Painful for sure. I think the answer to that is you have to watch a video. You have to have a place to either stop people or you have to have a captive audience. So if there's a gate, great. Stop, watch a video, you're good to go. Captive audience is a shuttle system. We can put video screens on the ride all the way up there, and the video just has to play while the driver's driving. So I think those two things would work. Both involve a decision and infrastructure in a different way, but I love the idea.
Well, folks, I think it's 8:30. Thank you guys so much. This is such a great conversation. I think we should continue it at Icicle Brewing, which is a great sponsor of WRI and many of these organizations. Let's go support them. Thank you for coming tonight.